So for me, Scytale is one of the most quietly terrifying villains in Frank Herbert's book universe, and I think it's that subtlety that has the potential to make him an iconic villain on the big screen. Unlike Feyd-Rautha, who embodies a physical threat and charismatic brutality, Scytale represents the enemy who can be anyone, wear any face he takes, and infiltrate any space. Paul's prescience, which gives him an advantage over Feyd, becomes a burden when facing Scytale. In Dune Messiah, Herbert introduces the character not as a brute force antagonist, but as a master manipulator, a face dancer of the Bene Tleilax whose entire identity is fluid. That fluidity is what makes him so dangerous, as he doesn't need to overpower Paul Atreides, he only needs to outthink him, outmaneuver him, and exploit the cracks forming in Paul's empire. What makes Scytale such a compelling villain in the Dune Messiah story is that he understands Paul better than almost anyone else in the book. He sees the weaknesses that Paul tries to hide through the burden of prescience, the weight of the jihad, and the fragility of the Messiah who never wanted to be worshipped. He then weaponizes those weaknesses, attacking Paul's identity, his sense of self, and the people around him. In the novel, Scytale's role in the conspiracy, being alongside the Bene Gesserit, the Spacing Guild, and the remnants of the old Imperial Order, positions him as the intellectual centre of the entire plot. Herbert writes him as a villain who thrives in the shadows. Take his introduction scene with the other conspirators, which shows him as the calmest, most calculating presence in the room. While others rage on about Paul's power or complain about the Fremen jihad, Scytale is the one who speaks with cold precision. He understands the stakes, the risks, and that the only way to defeat a messiah is to strike against his myth. This is why he proposes the use of Duncan Idaho's Gola being reborn as hate, a weapon of emotional sabotage. It's a plan that only someone like Scytale could conceive because it requires a deep understanding of Paul's psychology and a willingness to exploit it ruthlessly. By resurrecting Duncan Idaho as hate, Scytale forces Paul into a confrontation with his past, his loyalty, and his guilt. And in a way, Scytale can be looked at as a thematic counterweight to Paul himself. He represents the dark side of the Messiah narrative, the philosophical and genetic threat that Paul cannot simply defeat with prescience or military power. Scytale is the embodiment of everything that Paul fears, whether that be the loss of identity, the manipulation of genetics, or the erosion of humanity under the weight of destiny. A striking moment for me in the novel is Scytale's interaction with the character Farouk, the old Fremen who has lost his son to Paul's jihad. We know that this character is going to be in Villeneuve's Dune Part 3, and he'll also have an expanded role during some of the Holy War sequences. But when it comes to the book, Scytale uses Farouk's grief as a weapon, manipulating him with empathy. The scene reveals Scytale's true power in that he can mimic emotion, mimic humanity, and sincerity. He is a mirror held up to Paul's empire, reflecting back the suffering that some of Paul's followers refuse to acknowledge. So through the character of Scytale, Herbert forces the reader to confront the cost of Paul's rise to power, and I think come Dune Part 3, he can work as the perfect final villain for the trilogy. Again, he's not a warrior or tyrant type, he's a shape-shifting philosopher assassin whose power lies in his ability to manipulate the narrative around Paul. Villeneuve's films have always emphasized the sense of political tension, psychological conflict, or the cost of destiny, and I think Scytale fits that tone perfectly. He's the villain who forces Paul to confront the consequences of his own legend. And because Scytale is a face dancer, the film can use him to create moments of paranoia, tension, and dread, moments where the audience doesn't know who to trust or whether the person on screen is even who they appear to be. He is a product of the Bene Tleilax, a society built on genetic engineering, moral relativism, and the belief that identity is a tool rather than a truth. The character embodies that philosophy, a villain who believes he is right, and who believes that Paul's empire is a threat to the balance of the universe. While Paul is trapped by prescience, by prophecy, and by the expectations of billions, Scytale is unbound. He can be anyone, anything, and reinvent himself. It's this contrast that makes their dynamic so compelling, and a cinematic conflict that can be unlike anything from the first two films. Denis Villeneuve has always approached Dune with a blend of reverence and reinvention, and Scytale, being one of the most unusual antagonists in the entire saga, may be the character who benefits most from that approach. The trailer for Dune Part 3 already hints at a version of the character who is more psychologically unsettling. In Messiah, Scytale is a quiet manipulator, a face dancer who hides behind subtlety and political maneuvering. But Villeneuve's adaptation seems poised to bring that subtlety into a more cinematic form, one that uses visual language, performance, and tense atmosphere to make him feel like a constant shape-shifting presence. And visually, Scytale as a villain offers enormous potential. A face dancer on screen allows for transformations that can be subtle or dramatic, unsettling or beautiful. And Villeneuve can use him to create moments where the audience questions reality, where identity becomes unstable, and where the boundaries between the self and other blur. It's the kind of imagery that sums up perfectly the themes of Dune Messiah, where Paul's visions, doubts and fears begin to fracture his sense of self. The director may adapt Scytale by giving him a more defined physical presence than Herbert describes. In the books, Scytale's transformations are subtle, but cinema thrives on a sense of visual spectacle. So I think his transformations can be more uncanny and more unsettling come this adaptation, whether that be through quick cuts, blurred motion, or slight distortions in his facial structure. We even get a hint of that in the official poster for his character. Villeneuve could lean into the horror of a being who can shed identities like clothing. I don't think this contradicts Herbert's vision, as it could amplify it, highlighting that the Tleilaxu have always been body-shaping masters. So Villeneuve can showcase that mastery in a visual way that feels both tactile and eerie. I don't know if the look of his abilities as a face dancer will be similar to what we saw in the Dune Prophecy series, but my guess is that Denis will go his own route, especially as Messiah takes place 10,000 years beyond that show. They can make the whole face dancer thing look a lot more unique and impressive visually over the CGI effect we got in the Prophecy show. And when it comes to the tone of that character, I think you could also adapt him in a similar way to, say, Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. And I'm specifically talking about how his coldness and strangeness are presented on screen. In presenting him in a similar way, you can also add a sense of empathy that he has in the book in how he feels what others do. He understands and even feels sorry for those that he targets, yet he harms them anyway. There is something very creepy about that, and it reminds me a lot of Chigurh from No Country. And when it comes to the overall narrative, I think Villeneuve may also streamline Scytale's role in the conspiracy. In Dune Messiah, Scytale is one of several conspirators, each with their own agenda. Positioning him at the very centre of that narrative, the audience would respond to him as a clear, defined villain, showing Scytale's philosophical opposition to Paul. I think Villeneuve is going to condense the Bene Gesserit, Guild and Tleilaxu plots into a single unified threat that is embodied by Scytale, allowing the story to maintain the opposing momentum without losing its thematic depth. So as a whole, Villeneuve's Scytale can be a more cinematic and visually expressive antagonist. He can be a character who is eerie, unpredictable, and deeply tied to the film's themes of identity, destiny, and transformation. If the director follows through on these ideas with all aspects of the character, then Scytale could become one of the most memorable villains in modern science fiction cinema, not because he is loud or violent, but because he is a psychological threat. So it's clear that from a narrative and thematic sense, Scytale has the potential to be a great villain come Dune Part 3. But what I think can really carry his character over the line is the performance of actor Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson is one of the most fascinating actors working today, and casting him as Scytale was, in my opinion, a stroke of genius. Pattinson has built a career on playing characters who are strange, unpredictable, psychologically complex, and often deeply unsettling. From Good Time to The Lighthouse to The Batman, he has shown an ability to disappear into roles, to shift his physicality, voice, and his emotional presence in ways that feel almost transformative. That chameleon-like quality is exactly what a character like Scytale requires on screen. The actor excels at playing characters who operate on the edge of reality, characters who are both charismatic and unnerving. In The Lighthouse, he captured the slow unraveling of identity with a raw intensity that feels tailor-made for a face dancer. In Good Time, he showed how to play a manipulative and desperate figure who can charm and deceive in equal measure. And in The Batman, he proved he can embody a mythic figure while still grounding the character in vulnerability and psychological depth. The character of Scytale demands an actor who can shift between personas effortlessly, who can make the audience believe he is sincere one moment and cold the next. And I think Pattinson's ability to play ambiguity, to exist in the space between truth and deception, makes him perfect for this role. He could bring a quiet menace to Scytale, a sense that beneath every expression is a calculation and threat. And what I think makes Pattinson especially perfect for this role is his willingness to take risks. He's been choosing roles that challenge him, roles that push him into strange psychological territory. So I think the actor has the opportunity to redefine what a sci-fi villain can be. Not a warlord or a tyrant, but a shape-shifting manipulator whose power lies in identity itself. With the actor's talent for transformation, Scytale can become one of the most tension-driven antagonists in modern science fiction cinema. But that was my video discussing the potential of Robert Pattinson's Scytale in Dune Part 3. It's going to be interesting to see how director Denis Villeneuve has brought this character to life and what scenes he has chosen to adapt from Frank Herbert's book. Based on the small amount of footage we've seen with the character thus far, I think we're going to get an intelligent, mysterious and creepy performance from the actor in the scenes on screen. We'll just have to see how it all turns out, and as I said before, it'll be intriguing to see how they bring the Tleilaxu scenes to life, including all of the shapeshifting moments with the main villain. But are you excited for the adaptation of Scytale in Dune Part 3? Do you like the appearance of the character in the footage we've seen so far? And how do you think the director and actor will go about bringing him to life on the big screen? Let me know down below in the comments section. For much more videos and breakdowns, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.